Hi folks, my name is Jeff Drwg, all things prints this semester. This next presentation is based on shop drawings, which are drawings that a plumber might do to express or detail his professional knowledge of how he's going to do a piping plan or how he did a piping plan, often different from an architectural plan. It is based some of it, anyways, is based on Michael A. Joyce's Blueprint Reading and Drafting for Plumbers, a textbook that you may or may not have had. Anyways, the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is design intent. The term design simply comes from the idea that you need something intelligent to work from, and you can't just let her fly, as it was. So the definition from my Funk and Wagnalls is intelligent, purposeful, and discoverable pattern as opposed to chaos. And then intent is just what direction this is all supposed to be going. So if you're going to take the chaos out of something, you have to have a sense of direction that can be shared. And that's just the state of mind or a character attributed to. In plumbing terminology, what is the client looking for ultimately? So we're usually in charge of the design, and your client would be in charge of the intent, if you will. But it also means that things are never perfect. In this particular instance, we have what's called an architectural design intent, or at least the textbook refers to it as that. And what they have here is a little bathroom with a toilet, a sink, and a bathtub. A drain pipe that runs across behind all the fixtures with a vent at each fixture. That's all they're telling you, is they need these three fixtures along this wall connected to drains and vents. Would you actually build it like this? Absolutely not. There's so many different types of drainage systems. One of them is called a wet vent, and in a wet vent you actually have a single vent pipe, not three individuals. So this is something a little bit more like you would build. So the toilet, sink, and tub are all in the same spot. The drain has been relocated in a way that, providing you know what you're doing, in a way that makes for a better system. And then as you can see, this has a wet vent assembly. So there's only a single air pipe that supplies air to all three fixtures. It does change some sizing, which I'm not going to get into, but this would be something you actually want to build. The other drain had piping coming up in this wall, ton of it. This one just has a single one. Anyway, so it's much simpler. I should add that you would generally not have this T here. You would have a 45-degree elbow and a Y. So something like that, and you would eliminate this piece of pipe in here. And that's because you'd never want to lie a T down, or a TY, that would not have been a T. But you never want a right-angled fitting lying down on its side. As the flow of the liquid hits that T, it would slow down too much. Anyhow, so that would be one thing I would correct here. But other than that, this is that same bathroom, but with professionally applied piping, not architecturally applied piping. So this is a little exercise we have. I'm just going to sketch this one out. If you prefer to do your own work, stop this video for a second or freeze this video and try and draw this in isometric, which is what I'm going to do. Just as a way of explanation for what I'm looking at here, I have some hot and cold water distribution piping. So that's the supply piping. The double dashes is for hot, the single dash is for cold. This fitting, these fittings here in the wall, those are 90 degrees down and 90 degrees down. So that tells you this piping runs in the ceiling. If those were 90-degree elbows facing up, that would tell you the piping runs under the floor. So keep in mind, picture's worth 1,000 words, be aware of it. The other thing to be aware of, because of the concept of design intent, it doesn't show everything. It shows the pipe going into the wall, but it doesn't show the pipe coming out of the wall underneath the sink, which you do have to have. Right? So we will be drawing those things when we do. Again, I'm going to do an isometric, but when we do an isometric drawing, I will publish a video of a good copy of this, but for now I'm just going to do a rough. So for my style of drawing, I like to, at least when I'm teaching it, I like to do what's called the detail box. And that is I draw the room or area that helps me draw my piping. In this case, I'm going to draw the corridor between the two rooms. I'm going to draw that in isometric. I am using a mouse, so it's pretty much like freehand. And by the way, when I do a proper drawing, I always do a rough draft like this. Often freehand, not always freehand. So this would be the corridor. So it would be this area right here is what I've drawn. So I didn't even draw the rooms because my piping is predominantly in the corridor. So sticking with my detail box, I'll then do the hot water piping, which is this one. So I'm going to come down here, and then I'm going to go to the right, and then come down in the wall. So that's all the drawing shows, that 90-degree down, and you don't know what it does. But again, as a plumber, you'll realize this also has to come out of the wall, which would be this piece here. So there's another 90 at the bottom, and it's just all hidden from view. And then the pipe coming out of the wall has to be added. Then we'll do the double sink on this side. I'm using an interference style of drawing here. I'm breaking the line or highlighting the upper line and hiding the pipe in the back. So foreground, background. And that would go out of the wall the other direction. Then of course you can also add the cold. I am using red for hot water. Not everybody does. But then of course you can do cold water as well. Whoops. And so on and so forth. What do we got here? There. And there. This is going to land right on top of my other cold water piping. I'll stop there. But it gives you a sense of where I'm headed with this. I'm not going to stop there. I should have stopped there. Anyway, so that gives you a little draft. So if you're just turning the video back on and you tried this on your own, this is my rough, and I'll do a good copy video a little bit later and publish that in another section. So what does this look like in reality? Well, this happens to be a shop drawing, or sorry, this happens to be a set of architectural drawings that I was intimately involved with creating. There I am there. And I worked with a fellow by the name of Gabor, who was an engineer. I identified some components in a building we were working on, and then he did the drawings for the city. And they required an engineering stamp, so I couldn't do the drawings for the city. Anyways, we're going to take a look at a few components of this drawing, some of which you will recognize, which is this title block runs, it's a vertical title block, so the drawing space goes from top to bottom. Some title blocks run across the bottom, so then the drawing space is left to right. But in this case, the title block runs vertically, so the drawing does too. We have a set of symbols here, or a legend. You know, oftentimes people use different symbols. depending on their software or their style or whatever. Anyway, so if you're going to use some different symbols, you can always provide a legend with Gabor, which Gabor did here. When you have things like revisions, you can leave them open-ended. I do the same with my material lists. I leave them open so you can just keep adding lines on top. So I do that quite often. You have True Compass North here, and then you have Project North, which is just the nearest wall to north. So this is the north wall. And along that north wall, you have this detail box, this dashed line, or cut line, if you will, because there's an enlarged version of these washrooms. This is the men's and the ladies' washroom. So there's an enlarged version of this with some piping on it that I'll show you in a moment. This building was an older building, so I had to find the invert elevation for the main drain. And that was for a number of reasons, including, was it deep enough below the building that I could rise up with my fall, or my slope, sorry, all the way to these farther fixtures. Anyway, so I located the invert elevation, and then verify in field was also a concept. I guess I hadn't given him enough information, so he took a guess at something. Doesn't matter what that something is, but he felt it should be verified in field, so he put a note there. And then, of course, vent through roof is something right out of your textbook. Anyway, so that's some common aspects of what you'll see on design intent. And then you've got to tackle that and make a shop drawing out of it. So let's take a look at this cutout version, or this detail box with just the washrooms in it. And here it is here. We're going to do a blow-up version of all of this. But again, I just want to go over some of the common aspects of a drawing, and they're all things you're doing for this plumbing program. So here's your fixture schedule showing lavatory 1, lavatory 2, which is the well, again, we're going to do a blow up of this, so I'll stop. But this is your fixture schedule. It's got tons of information on it, all kinds of notes for the mechanical system and plumbing systems. And then you've got the drawing here with the actual piping on it. And remember, I was trying to figure out the reason I had to dig up the floor and find the drain pipe to find that invert elevation was to make sure that I didn't come above the finished floor, which is the AFF. Anyways, let's break her down a little bit. Here's the plumbing schedule. L1 is just a lavatory basin, and then L2 is the barrier-free lavatory basin. Cold water, hot water, drain, and vent have all been provided. As many of you know now, we don't often use the 1 1/4 minimums. We often upsize a little bit, but Gabor put in the minimums here, and he even put it in metric, so both numbers. Anyway, so that's the lavatories, a couple of different water closets, a urinal, mop sink, recirculating hot water pump, shower trim, and the barrier-free shower trim. Anyways, all stuff you should be doing throughout this program, so keep an eye out for that when it comes. Even some notes. This is the piping plan, and it's ridiculous. If you were to actually draw this piping right here, if I turn that and drew it in elevation, it would simply look like this. And again, I said before, you're not allowed to have a T on the horizontal, so that's not even legal. There's no way to even really vent that, and I don't think there's a vent on here. What do I got? 1, 2, 3, 5 toilets. 1, 2, 3, yeah. So you would never do this. As a matter of fact, you would probably do something more like, let me just erase this. You would most likely do something that looks more like this. So you'd have a 90 underneath the toilet, and then you come across. This one might be connected totally separately, but these other ones would connect like so. So my point to showing you this, again, just like in the textbook, is that even if you're intimately involved with the project and you're hiring the architect or the engineer, they still won't do a good piping plan for you. And I assure you, the drawings that I gave him for what I wanted looked more like my green lines here than they looked like the lines he actually put underneath those toilets. Anyway, so that gives you some idea of how you're always going to have to interpret, almost always have to interpret what an engineer or architect gives you. Because the design intent for this is he wants 5 toilets connected to a drain. That's it. So you've got the architectural drawings. You might have some shop drawings to make yourself a material list for it. And you might have as-built drawings that show what you actually did, because even your shop drawings may not pan out to be exact. In this particular case, he required, this is right out of the blueprint, he required, or the notes, he required as-built drawings. And they're sometimes called red line drawings. The reason they're red line is because anything submitted to the city that is authentic and not just a print, at least in days of old, nowadays digitally, I don't know, but in days of old, it was always had red. So if Gabor's stamp was red and the lines were red, that means it was all official stuff from the city. All right. So now you have a sense of how we interpret the architectural drawings to create shop drawings, and then the actual finished product might look a little bit different, so you have an as-built drawing. Let's take a look and see. Well, I can go back here one. No, I can't. So for this one here, this is the room, the mechanical room at the front of the building. I believe it would be the west wall, where that verify and field note was. And for this drawing, I'm not going to do it here, but I would ask that you draw this piping for the hot water heaters. And keep in mind that the water heaters sit up off the floor, and they have what's called an equal draw, equal feed assembly, at least on the hot water side. And what that means is every pipe that comes off the water heater is the exact same size. So these pipes that run to the left are the exact same size. These 2 pipes here and here are the exact same size. And even these little legs on opposite corners here are the same size. And that's so that you do that so that every water heater sees the same amount of water flow through it. Right? It's called equal draw, equal feed. Anyways, just to do a real rough sketch for you, I'll do the hot water piping, which is this one. So remember, these pipes are all the same size. Those are 90s down that go into the top of the water heater. So to draw this in isometric, it would look something like this. And then this is the piping you don't see into the top of the water heater. And then your water heater would sit something like this. Anyways, you don't need to draw the water heaters. I'm just looking for the piping. So there's a rough sketch of what the hot water piping would look like with the equal draw, equal feed. And then there's cold water piping as well, which you can do. But again, I'll create another video where I actually draw all of this. And there's the cold water piping. Now, for some reason, it doesn't show as equal draw, equal feed. It may be, but it could be vertical. Anyways, so until next time, my name is Jeff Drwg, all things prints this semester, and I hope you got something from that.